Okay. In your lifetime, did you see any aspects of slavery that still existed? Were there any jobs where involuntary servitude took place?
I haven't in my lifetime, because of the law, because of the amendments. What I see more are, as time goes on, it's people taking jobs that they have to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not servitude, it's not being considered property. You know, the individual's not being considered property that you're buying and selling and
Right.
sort of at their mercy. So I don't see that. I think you see that very infrequently in this country. Other countries, yes. You know, the slave trade, young girls being sold into prostitution, I mean, that to me would be pretty close, about as close as you can get. But I haven't personally experienced that.
Gotcha. Unfree labor could even be when an employee is blackmailed, physically threatened, or threatening to cause financial harm. Do you think these are more relevant types of slavery?
Yes, and I'm not sure I'd call it slavery. I look at that as resulting from laws that have been passed to ensure the sanctity of the amendments. So the amendment is the overriding federal guideline that states and the feds have to abide by.
Gotcha.
In order to enforce that, subsequent laws have been passed. Avoiding, it's illegal for employees to experience harassment on the job. And then to define harassment has varied over the years. So that if it's an uncomfortable work environment for many reasons,
Mm-hmm.
that could be illegal.
Yeah.
And you said, there was part of your question again about, what was part of it? Say that again.
Unfree labor could even be when an employee is blackmailed, physically threatened, or threatens to cause financial harm.
Unfair labor. I like that phrase. Isn't that what your phrase?
Unfree.
Unfree. I'm not saying unfair. Unfree. Yes, and I think a lot of times we're you feel like you really have sold your soul to the devil in many ways to stay at a job because you don't have recourse.
Right.
The employee doesn't have the recourse to speak up, to leave for any number of reasons. So those issues surround us everywhere.
The Equal Protection Clause requires each state to provide equal protection to each citizen, including racial segregation and gender discrimination. What are your general thoughts, and do you see it applied, especially with women in the workforce and the glass ceiling?
Yes, I mean, I think we see racial discrimination everywhere we go, religious discrimination all around us. I think we see gender discrimination everywhere there is. Wage. Are women earning the same wage as men? And I think 95% of the time the answer is no. That's anecdotal in my own personal opinion. But I very rarely see equity there. Gender discrimination, I think women still today work harder to prove their worth and their merit in professional school admissions. An example, medical schools, you read articles that medical schools really have admitted more than 50% of their incoming class is female. And yet, 2/3 of women in the medical field will leave the medical profession. Same with law. And why is that? Well, balancing everything in this day and age is very difficult. And so very often you'll see a lot of discrimination on the job as a result of that, saying, well, are you going to stay in the job market or not? Are you going to practice law forever or not? Are you going to be a practicing physician or not? Should we take a chance? Now, is it spoken these days? Probably not. Is it there? Probably. That would be my guess. Religious discrimination, you see more, I think, as a result of 9/11, that people are assuming they know all about a certain religion and it may not be true. And clearly that's been demonstrated since 2001. So it exists. I think lack of education is the primary reason for that. Racial discrimination, I think it's really hard to move above and beyond that. I think there's so many reasons for it. I think education is at the heart of it all. That's not this issue.
Another big act was the Higher Education Act, Title IX. This prohibited discrimination based on gender by universities, colleges receiving federal aid. What are your general thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I think the overlying principle is really valid. You wanna make sure that people have access to higher education regardless of gender. Because that's a federal law, and if states are schools are being supported by the federal government, they need to abide by those expectations too. And I think it's really important. I think it was really the key that opened the door for women in many areas. I went to law school back in the 70s. If I hadn't been female, chances are I probably wouldn't have gotten in. That's my own take on it. My scores were okay, but not stellar to get into professional school. However, they need a certain number of women, or percentage. So you're right on the cusp. So if I'm there competing against the male candidate and they need women, I'll get in. Really interesting that it works in your favor. I think that's an interesting dichotomy, especially when it happens to you.
Yeah.
So is it right? Is it fair?